Hello, my name is Deborah Rosinski, and I'm Executive Director of Bainbridge Arts and Crafts, and it's my distinct pleasure to be here today sitting with Caroline Cooley Browne to talk about her new exhibition on view throughout the month of September called Reconciling. And Caroline, it's really wonderful to have you and to have your work here all month.
Thank you for having me here, and I'm honored to be in the show, especially this year for your anniversary. My start was a late start. I grew up with a family of artists. My mom and sister were painting and drawing all the time, and my mom always had an easel set up in our playroom with a painting on it. I didn't think of myself as an artist. I was going to be a teacher. But I took a class in photography in high school, and it gave me a great training on how to look at things. And my mother very gently encouraged me to take a design class when I got to college. So I did. And it was the perfect design class. It was cut paper, scissors, colored paper, and we just made shapes and that answered different design problems. And I felt encouraged because it didn't take skill. I mean, it's skills I'd learned in kindergarten. And so it was very encouraging. And so I took another class, and then in sophomore year I took a ceramics and some weaving classes, but it wasn't until junior year when I landed at University of Washington that I decided to major in art. And so then I had to start with the beginning of drawing and a little more design work before I got into the major. And I did fine because I felt confident that I had a good sense of composition, and that whatever I was going to draw, I could put it on the page in a way that I liked and that was pleasing. So I got into fiber because looking at all the when I had to finally declare which specialty I had to, I looked at the class list, and every single fiber class was interesting to me. So I focused on that and just took a million classes all together and had the best time. And so, but I was thinking of being a textile designer at the time because I love pattern, I love color, I like multiples of things. And so it was when I was in, after school was out, and I did some work in the architectural fabric industry, that I realized I was more of an artist in terms of my personality than that cutthroat business of textile designing. So I went back to University of Washington after a couple of years. I wanted to stay in the area. And it was actually, that looking back was probably my most influential time of who I am now. Graduate school challenges you, and you're really focused, it's intense, it's all consuming. And so, which I loved. And but at University of Washington, there was only one fiber professor. So it made us branch out to other professors in different media to get input and feedback and all that. So my fiber professor just said, take one painting class before, oil painting class before you leave. And that was a big aha moment for me, realizing that I needed a media, or I need to work in a way that was spontaneous, that I could keep creating while I'm creating a piece, not something where in my soft sculptures I was making, you design it and then you put it together. I was frustrated with that process. So I took an extra year and completely redid my thesis, which became shears and layers and ethereal and cutting into it, painting on the fabric and cutting it up and reweaving it and all sorts of things. And so, and it was the first time I did an in-depth series, which made me realize that, and in addition to the graduate students, we all kind of challenged each other and thought, and I did a lot of, and with all the different professors, that it got to the core of what kind of work do I do? What inspires me? What do I want to say instead of just doing a design project? Mm-hmm. So it was, the thesis was first time I was really personal with a group of things, and so that was a big aha moment, and I realized that art was, if I can express, art helped me express what was inside me. And that's kind of how I go about it now. I'm intuitive about it. These drawings on the wall are all just from the gut, doing them. And then I look back and go, what am I trying to do here? And it's sometimes really tough stuff. So these drawings here are the beginning of this series here. So.
Yeah, and reading your statement about this body of work, so much is dealing with grief and loss, and thinking about the time we all just came through with COVID.
Yes.
So that, it sounds like that was a big factor in your process.
Yeah, yeah. The flags started in this series because of a dear friend's sister who I grew up with too. Had died, and it was COVID, so I couldn't go and see her and give her a big hug and spend So I went to my studio, and because I didn't think a card was going to do it. So I went to my studio, and having been in Nepal a lot and inspired by the prayer flags, I've always kind of had them in my back of my mind as one of those images that someday something's going to come out using those. I made her a set of white prayer flags, and that I stitched on with white, and it was personal to her what I stitched, and sent it to her. And not only did it work in that respect, but it made me realize it worked for me. And I also looked at it and thought, I could weave these. I've been weaving with little frame looms for a while, so that's, I kind of have these, and so I just started weaving, and the first one was called The First Year After. It's a white silk, it's hanging up here, and it's 12 for each month. And at the same time, it was COVID, like I said, and then I needed to be kind of really local due to some health issues going on with my husband, which are temporary. He's fine. But I needed to be close by, and so the little frame loom, I used it on my dining room table, and then I made that one, and then I just went to town. I just started making them. So I made more and more and more, and then it became this grouping, and when I got back to the studio, I was hanging them on my studio, and the studio became a more condensed version of what you see here, which was really fun.
More than 700 pieces, right?
Yes, they're, I think, incredible. Right before I finished, I did take a count, and it was 750 plus flags. Over 600 of them I've woven. So
wow.
So, but the beauty is with the little frame looms, you can take them everywhere. So that's kind of fun. But anyway, so it just kind of, again, intuitive, just what's next, I don't know, and okay, what do I want to do? And the bigger ones that are like this came before the flags, some of them. The more white ones came a little before all the series of flags, and then the ones at the end came later. So I paint on the warp, and with these here, I've also used tapestry technique to get the black square.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I almost see a thread connecting some of the small black shapes to the larger black shape.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely a tapestry of getting that black square in there, but the little dots are just painted on the warp, and I like how the weaving kind of breaks them up a little bit. So anyway, I do like to learn different techniques, and then they kind of sit in the background and
Percolate.
And the best example of that is I've been to Haystack Mountain School of Crafts starting in 2009 for 10 years, and realized it was almost it was kind of a repeat of my graduate school experience of wanting that intensive without all the housework, and
Daily
cooking,
distractions.
Daily distractions, yeah. And so working with somebody, really fine artists who were teaching and who were taking the classes, and all new people, didn't know anybody. So that was really great. And so I did it 10 years in a row, and I might go back again. I just haven't yet since 2018. But anyway, each time I do bring back something, and what reminded me was that the fir branches came from 2010. It was a class called Making Shadows, but was some of the other media were labeling as basketry. So we were trying to prove them it was more than that. But anyway, I learned to strip the fir branches there, and it's something that you can do in the spring, and the bark and the needles just come off like butter. And it smells like Christmas, and the wood underneath is absolutely gorgeous. So anyway, the point being that I loved it, but I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know what I would do with it. And so in 2012, I think I made one little piece, and then they sort of started appearing in pieces here and there, but this is obviously the biggest time I've used them. So
like the pieces right above you,
yes.
Those are fir branches?
Yes, yeah. It could be Douglas fir or Grand fir, just if someone's wondering. And I collect them everywhere. People have let me clip out of the yards. So
it's like your palette that you pull from, in a way?
Yeah, I kind of call it a skills toolbox. That you learn some things, and then you kind of tuck it away, and it's not always skills, it's maybe ideas. Like one instructor at Haystack had us bring something of 300 objects or things that, and then we would work with putting that together, and those kind of sticks in my mind. And I was thinking here I'd at least make 300 flags. Well, I more than doubled that.
You just kept going.
I did. Yeah, I know, and I have more I've already made since, but can't put it in the show. I do love doing it, so. But I do want to get back to some drawing at some point too. So.
Well, I imagine it's a very kind of meditative activity.
It
having
is.
Your hands in motion and just helping your mind be at peace.
Yeah. I mean, about a month or two before my mother died, I found myself in my studio, at least taking a half hour to just kind of be at my little loom and weave, and it really, I could feel the stress just come down, but also you're being creative. And so, yeah. So in 1982, my life changed a lot, and that's when I kind of figured out that grief was, helpful to, it was helpful to express or to work through the grief through my art. And so in the winter of that year, my brother died suddenly in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
And I was also just pregnant with our oldest daughter.
Oh.
And so it took a couple of years to kind of start, back to doing some work. And I sat down at the dining room table and did this exercise that my fiber professor had said to do. Just, we did it in, one of our classes, and just sit down and draw the same composition over and over and over again, just very quickly. And I did that, and it's really a great exercise for me to kind of, where am I? What am I doing? And so I realized what was going on, that I was still, affected by his death and hadn't moved on much from there. So a year or two later, maybe after that, I was in my parents' house and I saw this hallway, and it had a few doors down the hallway. It was kind of dark, and at the very end, the door was open, and there was this orange, kind of peachy color light coming there, and I looked at that and started drawing it, and realized that I needed to go down that hallway. And so that got me back into my work. And so my sister sent me this set of little oil pastels and said, I think you'll like these, because she's an artist, obviously. And I loved them. I loved them because I like techniques that you can play with, that don't demand being exact or else it's wrong. And I can play with it. And oil pastel, you put on this layer, and it affects everything, but you can almost totally cover it up. I mean, there's always some, I think whether it's white or black under, the bottom of a painting, there is a slight effect. But anyway, you can layer it and layer it and layer it, or scrape into it, or scrape it off. Oh, I don't like that part. And so I did I did some small oil pastels, and then I also did these much more strongly colored and closer to what these drawings are, but with layers of not just silk, but window screen and a painting on it, and they were rough. I mean, in terms of, they weren't ethereal and soft. They were, much more expressive. And so the whole series became my hallway series.
Oh, wow.
And it really did. At the end, I was just doing drawing and journaling, and just realized that it helped me work through a lot of the grief with my brother. And I mean, you always miss them. You always, but you get to a point where you can live in harmony with it. I mean, you're okay and you're at peace with it, and you can live your own life and have a full life. And that's what reconciling to me is. Yeah. So you don't get over it, but you get through it. But working through it was important to me. So anyway, after that series, I just started working in oil pastel. And I was on the beach, a little series. The first show I had here. Oh. And in the late 90s, I think it was. And then later in the early 2000s, I started this chair series. As I like architecture, and I like to contrast it with nature. So this is actually the most, in that respect. I like the softness of nature and how it kind of softens architecture, and architecture gives it structure. So that's been a theme that I've known about since graduate school. We challenged each other in graduate school. Can you break it down to one word that your work is about for all time?
Oh my God.
Doesn't that sound like a graduate school student?
Very much so.
And my comrade who was in at the time, we figured it out, and mine was compliments. Oh. I like the duality, but it was with architecture and nature. So that's been a theme in my work all along. But so in various ways, whether it's the chairs, they aren't perfect. They are, there's a little bit of organicness to them. So. Yeah.
Sort of nature and nurture and imposing one's will and not.
Yeah. I mean, I'm attracted to, in those early days, I did some paintings that were like the fence posts in a field, or the indication that there was architecture there, or like a pier at the Anacortes dock. It's broken down. And then if you get the fog in there, boy. Right. I love the layers, so that's another theme that I have.
Wonderful. So it really sounds like intuition drives you,
Yeah, very much.
leads you through the process. And I think it takes a lot to learn to trust oneself enough to be led in that way.
Yeah, I suppose so. I guess I've known about that for a while. I mean, every piece isn't good work, but I can easily throw something away, or take it apart and redo it, or
It is freeing, though, I think, to learn how to remove that judgmental voice that each of us carries, and
it's
just make things, and then later look at them with fresh eyes. Because that inner critic can destroy so much.
Yeah, and it's really hard to get rid of that inner critic, and I struggle with that.
Yeah.
So, but I usually, one thing that was interesting about this show for me, or when I was doing the series, was I think I've been more clear in this series of what I was doing and how I'm feeling about it and where I'm going than any other series. Usually in my studio, I don't really want people in to comment, because once someone said something, you can't forget it.
Yeah.
So, but it hasn't been a problem with this one. I know what I'm doing, and so that's felt really good.
Oh, that's great.
So,
well, it's a powerful room, looking around at all these elements that you've created, and it seems quiet at first, but there's an awful lot going on. It's just really wonderful having it all here in the space.
oh, well, thank you for having me.
And we look forward to the reception tonight, and you're a big part of our anniversary celebration coming up, bringing your little looms that you mentioned.
Yeah,
so
you bet. Yeah.
Folks can learn how to weave little looms, which I'm looking forward to trying. You've been integral to our history here, and so we felt it important to share you in a big way in this year.
Well, again, I'm honored very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Stop into the gallery soon to see Caroline Cooley Browne's unique woven works in person, on view from September 1st through October 1st, 2023.